morning, Viewpoint, a program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. And boy, we've got a politician this morning and a great perspective. So we're going to introduce this gentleman very, very shortly. Senator, we have always tried to start Viewpoint with a kudo or two, something that's going on in the community or some individuals or something. Judy and I went to what we call the Lincoln Area Music Society, a concert the other night. We are particularly lucky in this community to have the musicians who are willing to give their time and their talents considerable. We have two groups, musical, instrumental, and a choral group. And last Sunday, the choral group appeared, and they knocked it out of the park. If you excuse a bad pun, since it was at Latham Park. They were outstanding. Didn't you think so, Mrs. Busby?
Excellent, excellent. It was most enjoyable, and the Women's Club was there selling homemade cake and not homemade ice cream.
We're, being a small community, Golden County is not as big as Peoria County and so forth. You have a bigger draw, a bigger pool from which to draw for people who have talent, and you have Bradley University there, of course. We just think it's remarkable to bring out the talent that we bring here. People come off the streets, the radio announcers and shoe salesmen and beauty parlors and wives and and husbands, and it's really a great aggregate group. And we have two great leaders, and this is I went to absolutely blank, Judith Kay. Oh well.
Not a problem.
I do that often. We don't worry about that. It's just a matter of, that's what's called the age factor. Would you, why don't you get formally introduced? Oh, and one more kudo.
Okay.
We had a young man from New Holland, this agricultural community that we enjoy here, and these folks get involved in 4-H, and you know all about that, Senator. And we had a young man at a Central Illinois Angus show, and young Mr. Starling, that's not the gentleman. I'll get it in just a minute.
Rawlings.
Here, David Rawlings. Boy, the old man's having trouble this morning, Judith. Anyway, he won grand champion, so good for him. Congratulations, David. Why don't you introduce our guest? Let's get down to serious business.
State Senator Darin LaHood, and I'm sure we're all familiar with the name LaHood. We had his dad with us on a number of occasions.
Thousands of votes cast here in Golden County for LaHood.
Darin has served us well here in the State Senate, and now he would like to or is, in fact, a candidate for the special election on the 7th of July that will be held for the seat being vacated by Aaron Schock. So we're awfully happy you could take time out of your day to be with us, Senator.
Busy schedule, boy.
I don't know how you do it. Do you sleep at night, or are you still running when you get in bed?
Well, first of all, let me say, Bill and Judy, thank you for having me in studio today. It's a pleasure to be with you and your listeners today. And we got up early. My wife and I, we live in Dunlap, Illinois. We have 3 boys, 13, 11, and 9. And they're good most of the time, not all of the time. They're boys.
That's because they're children.
That's right. But yep, we got up this morning and came down here, and we're very busy with the campaign going on.
Yes.
The election's on July 7th, and we're encouraging people. You can early vote at the courthouse in Lincoln there anytime, Monday through Friday when the courthouse is open, and we're out there campaigning hard in this election, special election, and reminding people, July 4th is going to be a busy weekend. People aren't thinking about a special election, but it's very important to vote.
Yes, it is.
Because this district is going to go without a voting representative for about 6 months. So I'm running as a candidate, and I've currently served as a state senator for about 4.5 years, representing the district in central and west central Illinois. And before that, I was a state and federal prosecutor for about 10 years, working in Tazewell County as an assistant state's attorney, Cook County as a drug prosecutor, and then also as a federal prosecutor with the Department of Justice.
I've been seeing your ads on television, and 4 of the points that especially tweaked my interest, and I don't think I'm alone at all, were you mentioned real reform, you mentioned the bureaucracy and the problems of that, you mentioned special interests, and you mentioned waste. And those were four of the things that you were particularly interested in. And I'd like, since we are kind of short on time here, I'd like if you'd take them one by one and kind of enlarge upon them, because on a soundbite on an ad, you don't really get too much in depth to things. Let's start with real reform and your interpretation of what that's going to involve.
Yeah. Well, first of all, if you look at the federal government, $18 trillion in debt is unacceptable. I think about the future of my 3 children and think about people in this congressional district, their kids and grandkids being saddled with $18 trillion of debt. And what I've said is we need real reform when we look at the federal government. Everything should be looked at how we reverse that trend, because when you look at 20 cents on the dollar is being paid in interest to the Chinese, because we're in debt. And we have to change that. When we think about, leaving that debt to our kids, that's immoral, that's irresponsible. And so when I talk about real reform, we have to look at everything at the federal government on how we bring down that debt. I've worked very, very hard at the state level to do that. I would just tell you, in my own Senate office, I just announced last week I've given back $100,000 in 4.5 years out of my state allowance. So every senator gets about $82,000 a year to run their offices. Every year I've given back over 25% of my office allowance back to the taxpayers in Illinois. That's a small example of, at the federal level, we have to look at everything in federal government. How do you make it effective, efficient, and accountable to taxpayers?
What about the legality of these god-awful debts? The federal debt and the debt in this state. I think I understood at one point that it's illegal for us. It's unconstitutional for us to be so in debt in Illinois. Is that true?
So, yes. I mean, if you think about it, we have to, by Constitution, have a balanced budget, but we haven't done that.
No, obviously. Now, what about the federal level? What's the constitutionality and the legality of that?
Well, I mean, again, I would just tell you, I think it's immoral, irresponsible to have an $18 trillion deficit. But under our system, we've gone into debt for various reasons, but that has to stop. This is the highest we've ever had our debt, and we have to reverse that trend and make it come down, and that comes with fiscal restraint. Now,
we're into talking about debt, and in my mind, it goes debt/bureaucracy. And that's one of the points that you mention in your TV ads, is the problem of the bureaucracy. What in the world are you going to do about it?
Well, I think if you look at the federal bureaucracy, it keeps growing and growing and growing.
Right.
I mean, I give you an example. I mean, something like the TSA. They just had a big scandal with the TSA where they did this undercover thing and 90% of the guns got through.
Yeah, but they did get my cold cream and my hairspray. You'll know that you're safe from that.
Well, Judy, you raise a great point, because we have to take off our belts and our shoes and do all this stuff, and then 90% of the guns on this thing get through. My point is, we ought to think about the TSA and giving it to the private sector. Let's contract out and not have government involved with everything.
Exactly.
How much money we spend on these federal agencies, TSA, let's make it a private entity, give it to the private sector, and hold them accountable. I think that's one example. The other thing that I would look at is, the IRS. I mean, the IRS, you look at the Lois Lerner, you look at how they targeted Republicans and conservatives. Again, that's an example of, we need to defund the bureaucracy there, and again, look at how you make it effective, efficient, and accountable to taxpayers.
Well, since you're talking about those kinds of problems, how about the Secret Service? My golly, talk about a broken leg.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at IRS, TSA, Secret Service. There's scandal after scandal there over the last several years there.
Oh, they're weekly scandals.
Weekly, yeah. I mean, that's a very, very good point. I mean, the other example I use is about a year ago we had the big scandal with the Veterans Department.
Yes.
And to this day, one person's been fired.
Yeah,
a year later, one person's been fired.
Boy, he must have had a lot of responsibility to carry that whole load.
Yeah, I wish that was the case, but in fact, it's not. It's very difficult, and particularly this administration, when you look at it, these are examples in the federal system, when I talked about the bureaucracy, that need to be changed and scaled back.
Well, excuse me, honey, go right ahead.
How about the special interests? I think I think, and I don't think I'm alone, I think so many times that those who are serving in the political arena are much more aware of the special interests and what they can get from them than they are of plain Bill and plain Judy just living here in the flatlands trying to do the honest thing.
Well, I would just say, Judy, I could just tell you at the state level in the state Senate, I've been the sponsor of 24 pieces of ethics and transparency legislation over the last 4+ years, long before I ever decided to run for Congress. My background being a federal prosecutor, I've been involved with public corruption cases. And, you know, the state of Illinois is a good example where we need to clean up corruption. So I'll just give you one example. In Illinois, a bill that I've sponsored for 4.5 years is a bill that would prevent legislators from immediately becoming lobbyists. Well, what do I mean by that?
Oh, yes.
So as we sit here today, I could legally negotiate a contract with State Farm to be their lobbyist, quit today as a senator, tomorrow be a full-time lobbyist for State Farm, and benefit from my public service. So I'm making money off my public service. Now, in 40 other states, that's illegal. You can't do that. You have to wait a year or 2 years after you leave the legislature to become a lobbyist. So my bill that I've introduced for 4 years would stop that practice. We can't get a vote on it because the Democrats in Springfield out of Chicago, they sit on it because they make money. And let me just tell you, I don't look at this as a Republican or Democrat issue. This is a good government issue. So when we talk about special interest, Judy, this is a good example of I've been out in front on this, fighting this. Now, I'm going to tell you one good thing. When Governor Rauner got elected, his first executive order, the first bill signing that he had, he took the language from my bill and made it apply to the executive branch. So everybody in his executive branch cannot lobby for 2 years after they leave government. And I was right there for it. Now, it doesn't apply to legislators yet because we haven't had a vote on it. But everybody in the executive branch is now under that executive order.
Well, the real world says that it's not going to come up for a while because look who's in charge of the hen house down there in Springfield. And Mike and John are not going to let that come up to even see the light of day.
Yeah.
Now, all the people who work for the state have to have ethics training and take an ethics test every year. Do the people in Springfield have to take an ethics test?
They do, but I mean, there's ethics training every year, which is good, and we should have that. But there's other things, like I'll give you another example. I'm the sponsor of a bill that relates to transparency in state government. So right now, if you are a sitting legislator, every year you have to file what's called a statement of economic interest that says where you make your money at, what you do. On there is nothing that says if you have a family member that's a lobbyist. So let's say my brother's a lobbyist for Caterpillar in Peoria. I don't have any obligation to disclose that on that form. So the public would never know if a family member of mine is lobbying me. So we tried to change that. So I have a bill that I've introduced every year that would make the public aware that special interests in my family are lobbying. Makes sense, right? And it's not just me mentioning this. The New York Times did a big story on this about 2.5 years ago about the problem in Illinois, and we have some of the worst transparency laws or lack of transparency. So I've worked very, very hard on that bill. We got it passed in the Senate last year. We couldn't get it through Speaker Mike Madigan's House. Wonder why, right?
Yeah,
but again, these are common sense reforms, whether it's banning legislators from becoming lobbyists or more transparency on everybody. Every taxpayer should be aware if they have a family member that's a lobbyist and you're a legislator. It makes
Senator,
common sense.
Do you ever feel like you're the salmon swimming upstream against a very strong current?
Yes.
Really. I'd like to, you have the phrase term limits in your campaign literature and as part of your campaign philosophy. That just has to resonate exceptionally well throughout, from Cairo to Rockford, But would you define that, please, how you would like to see that go about? For instance, in terms of time, would a senator 2 terms, legislator maybe 3 terms? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. Well, let me just tell you a couple things. So I've been the chief sponsor in the state Senate of term limits for the 4 years that I've been there.
Think of that.
And my bill in the state Senate says you should serve for 10 years in the House or 10 years in the Senate and then move on. And let me just tell you, Bill, so that you wouldn't serve even more than 10 in the state Senate, more than 10 in the state House. That's my bill. I've introduced it every year. I've been a strong proponent. Now, the reason why I feel so strongly about term limits, if you came down to the Illinois State Senate and I took you around and you met my 58 colleagues there, see, people have been there for 44 years, 42 years, 38 years, 36. And remember, this was a part-time job. When we set up Illinois, this is a citizen legislature. So it used to be you were a farmer or a teacher or a businessman. You went to Springfield for a month and a half in the spring, did your job, came back home. Here's the reality today. 70% of our legislators, this is their full-time job. Yeah. So they don't have a separate job.
That's wrong.
The second thing is we're the third highest paid legislature in the country. So, you know, and we don't have much to show for it, do we?
Not so much.
No. So my point is, term limits, if you look at other states that have passed term limits, Michigan has it now, Ohio has it now, Missouri, about half of the people in the United States live under term limits now. I'm a big believer, everybody is replaceable, right? Bringing smart, young, new people into government is a good thing. And I don't think we can get much worse in Illinois. And that's why I've been a strong proponent of term limits.
Another thing about us is we have more levels of government than any of the other states. I don't, you know, that's kind of like unsaying something to try to cut back. I know. But I think Governor Rauner was elected because the plain Bills and the plain Judys wanted some reform, wanted some responsibility, wanted some sense of not just throwing money with both hands. But still, no matter what he says, it's kind of like Bill's saying about the NIMBY, you know, yes, we want to cut this god-awful debt we've got, but not those people. No, don't cut it on them. Don't cut it on them. Don't cut it on... They won't let anything go through.
You know, Judith...
So where are you going to save?
I have to make a break right here because we have a debt level here at WLCN, and if it doesn't get paid by paying the bills with their sponsors, we won't have a job, Judith. Go ahead, James. All right, welcome right back here live in the studios of Viewpoint, the 96.3, phone number 648-5510. Our guest this morning is State Senator Darin LaHood. That name might just resonate with a few voters out there down through the years. We've sent his father, Congressman Ray LaHood, out to Washington many times. We appreciate the fact that, number one, Darin, with your federal prosecutor background and so forth, and that certainly is an interesting background, but that you're making yourself available for a seat that's open now, unfortunately. And we need people who are got their head screwed on straight, and we appreciate your presence here, Darin. I'd like to ask you, just as a quick aside, the Donald dropped his anchor in the water yesterday. You have any comments about that, sir?
We won't. I kind of laugh about it. You know, listen, I think having an open primary system, anybody should get involved, but I'm very skeptical of him. I think he's out there you know, more for self-serving purposes and more for his money-making operation. But, you know, hey, it's part of our system. He's been successful. Let's hear his viewpoint on it. He wouldn't be my first candidate.
Well, maybe not any of our first candidates, but one of the pundits was saying something about all the people who are involved on the Republican side. They do have, each of them, ideas, and their ideas will be expressed hither and yon. And so maybe somebody who is elected will pick up on some of the good ideas that the candidates that didn't win have espoused.
Yeah, right. It's strange. We have more candidates coming out of the gate than they do in the starting gates at the Preakness or the Kentucky Derby, for goodness sakes. That's going to be a very interesting show. And in a way, that's a kind of a double-edged sword to me. It's good that we have a lot of candidates, but I think it's almost gotten silly now.
Yeah, well,
it's beyond the realm of what will work.
Yep. Well, I think we got some good quality candidates in there. I like a number of the governors that have actually got stuff done around the country, whether that's Scott Walker or John Kasich in Ohio or Bobby Jindal, the governor. We have some strong governors and lots of other. I guess I look at it as a Republican, we got to elect somebody that can win and beat Hillary Clinton in 2016. I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it. Let's find the best person that can win this election, and again,
turn this thing around and get it headed on the track right. 648-5510. Senator Darin LaHood is kind enough to be with us, so if you have any questions, now's your time, folks. Or if you want to lambaste him, he can take that. He's a pretty strong guy. Go ahead, Judy. You're going to ask something.
I was wondering, another of the points from your TV commercials was about waste, and I don't think anybody will argue with you that we waste a lot. How in the world do you make any inroads into this? You know, we kind of have, the Logan County war cry extends clear across the country. You know, why do we do this? Well, we've always done it this way, you know?
Well, Judy, it's very hard in government. Once you turn on the spigot of government, it's hard to shut that off.
Right.
And we have to get, I mean, here's the way I look at it, Judy. People in Logan County or in this 18th Congressional District, you know, in your own family business or in your own personal finances, if you don't have enough money coming in on a monthly basis in your own personal finances, well, what do? Well, you get rid of a second car, you get rid of cable TV, you don't take a vacation, you cut back. And that's what, you know, we need to do on the state and federal level, is have more of that kind of common sense. When we don't have enough money coming in, you got to cut back. And what I've said is, I think the fairest way to do this at the state level is, we mentioned this earlier, everybody has a program they like, right? Whether it's education, or whether it's a road and a bridge, or whether it's you know, a social service agency, or college education, whatever that is. There's these sacred cows out there. I think the fairest way to do it is go across the board. You know, whether that's 2% or 3% or 4%, or do 3 or 4% every year until you get the debt down. That should affect legislators, our staff, but everybody in government should be affected across the board. I think that's the fairest, most reasonable way to do it, because everybody has somebody that doesn't, you know, is going to be out there crying wolf on it.
But you have these people who've been down there since Hector was a pup, you know, and they have their little prized things, and they have a following, and to get past them, to do something progressive, to do some money saving. I tell you, if I ran my checkbook the way the state and federal governments run theirs, I'd probably be in jail. Yep,
jail or bankruptcy. You're exactly right. Yeah, that's the problem. We need to, again, focus. I mean, and that takes real leadership, is taking on some of these special interests, taking on the lobbyist entities, taking on the establishment that feed off this system. And that's the tough part. You know, again, whether it's ethics reform or transparency, you know, that's why I'm a big believer in term limits, big believer in more transparency, big believer in holding people accountable. If you're not doing your job, then you have to be held accountable. I mean,
well, that's how it is in the private sector.
No doubt about it. And listen, there's been a bill introduced on the federal house, you know, that if we don't balance the budget, we shouldn't get paid. I'm a believer in that.
Right.
Or when special sessions have to be called back because they have failed to do their job before the term expired or the time limit expired, they get. Now, I think this time we're not paying our legislators. Am I correct in that?
That is correct.
Well,
but that has not happened in the past. A lot of times they go back and so they're double dipping again.
Yes.
Now, Senator, you said earlier in the program that you had returned some $100,000 to the citizens. We appreciate that. The reason I reiterate that is that I wonder what percentage of our legislators fall in that capacity, where they return money that they have not expended, that they were allocated.
Yeah, well, I don't want to be too self-righteous about this.
I understand that.
But I would just tell you this. I've been at the top of all the senators, the 59 senators, I've been at the very, very top, 1, 2, or 3 with returning money every single year back to the taxpayers. And again, I think it's important that you don't only talk the talk, but you walk the walk on fiscal responsibility. And, you know, that's why I'm proud to give back over $100,000 in 4.5 years back to the state of Illinois and taxpayer money.
That's impressive. Very impressive. Go ahead, Judy K.
Well, let's go back to waste. and how you combat this. There's so much, we see it every day in our lives, and we waste all this money, and the infrastructure in this country is going to pot in a handbasket. Now, something's got to be done about that. So do we just add then to these trillions of dollars of debt and let the waste continue?
Well, Judy, we cannot continue to add to our debt. It's irresponsible, it's immoral to do that. So, one thing we have to look at is, I think, entitlement reform. We have to look at that. I mean, I look at myself. I'm 46 years of age. I've paid into Social Security. It's a good program. But for me, if somebody said, hey, Darin, we want to raise that retirement age for you and people that are younger, people are living a lot longer, that's something we need to look at something we're going to do for people that are my age or younger that are living a lot longer. It's a good problem we have in this country. People are living a lot longer. How we look at our entitlement system, has to be part of the conversation. 2/3 of our budget at the federal level goes to entitlements.
Why do we always put Social Security in the entitlement basket?
It's not an entitlement.
Because, I worked till I was 75. Well, I still have this job, Jim, unless he tells me differently.
Well, we're on the cusp on that. But
yeah. So I've paid in all those years since I was 16. I do the math quick. Yeah. Okay. So why is it an entitlement?
Well, I would just say, I think people that have paid into the system and done what you do, we're not talking about reforming that. We're talking about younger people, because if we don't do something, it's not going to be there for people our age.
Well, and if they'd quit dipping into it.
Yes.
Things are a funnel. We have this fund for, name it, but it's a funnel, and we can take, it's just like education. Every time we planned to expand on our gambling interests, it was going to help education. Well, but not directly. It's going to go into the general fund, which will help education, but the general fund helps everybody.
Yeah. Well, let me mention one other thing. We talked about entitlements. The other thing is our welfare system in the federal government. So I have been the sponsor in the state legislature of a bill that would require anybody in the state of Illinois that receives benefits, receives welfare, should be drug tested. Now,
yes.
Absolutely.
So that's my bill. It's in about 12 other states right now. Florida has passed it. So what my bill says is, what it would say is, if you are on welfare receiving taxpayer benefits and you test positive for drugs, we don't immediately cut you off. We allow you to get rehabilitation treatment and drug treatment. If you go through that and do that, you can continue to get your benefits. Florida, where I modeled this law after, what had happened in Florida is about 60% of the people that tested positive didn't go get the rehab or failed rehab, and so they fell off of it, or they didn't want to do it. The point is, we as taxpayers pay into the system. I want to help people that need help. There is no doubt about it. Welfare needs to be a trampoline, not a hammock, right? That's what it needs to be. It needs to boost people up, give them a start. Yeah. We need to help people. Let's do it. But people that are going to be addicted to drugs and alcohol should not continue to receive benefits. I can't get a vote on that bill. People think you're, racist or you're discriminating against people. I've heard everything on this bill. But again, for me, it's something that makes common sense when we get back to waste. Right? This is taxpayer money that's going to fund these programs. People should be held accountable.
Accountability is what we need in this world.
There ought to be some way where those who are on welfare, and all of us agree with you, in that the people who genuinely need help ought to get that help. But we all know how that system is milked. And I mean, no dairy in the country is milked any more than our welfare system is. These folks who are on welfare exploit it. They'll be able to buy cigarettes, anything, all those things that they don't need, as opposed to the real necessities. I don't know how you turn that key to shut that off.
Well, I think it takes... you got to, first of all, you can't, we live in such a PC world here. Well, you're going to offend this person or that person, or this is discrimination. Accountability, discipline, responsibility, that's what we're elected to do. That's how you have to lead. You got to put good public policies in place to establish those core principles: responsibility, accountability. Those are the things that, when I think about people in Logan County or in this district, people that work hard, play by the rules, strong faith in God, they love their community, but they want government to function well and be responsible. And that's part of what we have to do, is fight for those principles and make sure we hold people accountable. That's what makes America great.
Well, Ronnie Reagan said, the government's a problem, and in so many ways, he's exactly right. If you were to be successful, Senator, to what committees would you aspire to be appointed as a congressman?
So obviously, agriculture is the #1 industry in this district.
Sure.
I've been a strong proponent of agriculture as a state senator. If you came to my office in Springfield, I got a red tractor on my desk and a green tractor from getting the Farm Bureau Activator Award, which I'm very, very proud of. Ag is very, very important. We have to continue to do all we can to keep the federal government out of the lives of farmers. From my point of view, farmers are the best stewards of the land. We need to let them do their job. And I would, if I was fortunate enough to get elected, seek a position on the Agriculture Committee. And then also transportation and infrastructure, I think, is important to this
Your
district.
dad liked that.
He did.
You had a little background there.
And again, if you look at this district, whether it's the Illinois River, the Mississippi River, or our rail system, or our highways and our bridges and our roads, infrastructure is important for our agriculture community. It's important for companies like ADM and Caterpillar and John Deere. How do we get products up and down the Illinois and Mississippi River through our locks and dams? And then how do we upgrade our system? Because ag and transportation go hand in hand. So those would be two committees I'd be interested in.
Thank you for that answer on that. The matter of waste, Judy alluded to a while ago. I don't think you've got enough time in your short life to make much of an impact on the waste of government. It's the part of the beast. It's so easy to say, well, it's not my money. We'll get that. Don't worry. But we'll just go ahead and spend that without any authority. There's so much of that going on. Comments on that, sir?
Well, I would just say,
pretty vague.
Again, I'm proud in the state Senate over the last 4.5 years. I've never voted for a tax increase. I've voted against any budget that overspends the amount that we're bringing in every year. I mean, I think right now we're at a crossroads in the state of Illinois. If you look at what Governor Rauner is holding out, because here's the facts. We're bringing in $32 billion a year in tax money in Illinois, and the Democrats want us to spend $36 billion, $4 billion more. You can't spend more than you're bringing in, and you got to get back to a surplus or a balanced budget. Before you got to have fiscal solvency. Illinois is an example of when you don't have fiscal solvency, when you have fiscal irresponsibility, we continue, unfortunately, to hemorrhage people out of this state. Jobs, opportunities, and people leave Illinois.
Yes, they do.
Because of fiscal insolvency. And so Illinois is a good example of, if you don't have fiscal responsibility, people are going to leave your state.
And they are.
And they are, Judy. They're
It's not
absent.
just industry. It's just plain people that are leaving. They say, the heck with it. It costs too much to live here, and they don't do anything.
Do you see any hope, long run even? Not certainly. I don't think I see any short-term hope. We have this us versus them mentality down there in Springfield, unfortunately. Mike and John, they just want to do things the way they've been doing them for the years because they've been in charge by God, and we're going to do it my way. Is there any chance that we're going to begin to let Governor Rauner and anybody else begin to get in and get some sense of order out of this process?
Well, let's remember, I think Governor Rauner has brought some hope and optimism to the state in turning this around. He understands we're only going to grow this economy with more private sector growth instead of more government growth. And that's the foundation that he comes in with. We are not going to grow Illinois. We need Caterpillar to be building their next plant in Logan County. We need State Farm expanding here. We need all these companies expanding here instead of other places. So Rauner, remember, he won on fixing Springfield, shaking up Springfield. He won with a large plurality.
Exactly.
People spoke and said, we want to change. So I give him credit now. we need to do something about Speaker Madigan and John Cullerton and elect some more Republicans, and I think Rauner's going to help do that. But it's definitely a start. The whole dynamic has changed in Springfield, and that's what the battle we're in right now in terms of what direction the state of Illinois goes. And I give him a lot of credit. So there is some hope and optimism there in turning around the state. We have to continue to get with other like-minded people, get out there and convince people we're going to change Illinois, because we can't get much worse. We can only go up from here. It's how quickly we go up.
Well, we can't expect him to turn it around in 6 months, you know, and this has been an ongoing problem for a bit.
Senator Darin and LaHood, we appreciate very much your taking time out of a very, very busy schedule. We're at the tail end of almost of the election process here. July 7th, we're coming up here with an election, and Senator LaHood is running for the 18th Congressional District. John Tarzinski, we appreciate your making sure that the senator got here on time. John's got a tough job when you have a political candidate with so many people reaching out and wanting them here and wanting them there. That's a difficult job. So thank you very much. We always try to close with a comment that hopefully apropos of the subject matter. And I found one here, but I don't know Patrick Murphy, but it sure rings true. It said the political process does not end with Election Day. People need to stay involved in the process by continuing to pay attention to the considerations and by holding themselves accountable for the decisions they made.
Well said, Bill.
Senator LaHood is holding himself accountable. Anybody that returns that kind of money is accountable, folks.
Thank you very much.
Well, Judy and Bill, thank you very much to be with you and your listeners. Just remind people the election's on July 7th. If you want to early vote, if you're going to be gone on July 7th, go to the Logan County Courthouse. You can early vote there any day. If not, make sure you get out on July 7th. It's very, very important. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.